You are listening to the Billy Dees podcast.
We are waiting just a minute for everyone to engage the live stream. Remember, you can find the Billy Dees podcast on your favorite platform.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the program. This is a special edition of one of our live events. I'm going to wait just a moment. We're about a minute in. I wait just a moment for everyone to refresh their browser, their app, whatever it is that they're checking out the live cast on. And I'm going to go ahead and begin the podcast. Thank you for joining. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. As always, I'm absolutely thrilled that you are here. My name is Billy Dees. If you've never checked us out before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. We often go live with commentary. We're going to do that right now. With me is Cynthia Elliott. Cynthia, thank you for being here.
Hello, Billy.
Unfortunate circumstances coming on today. This is in regard to what happened to Charlie Kirk. And unless you've been totally under a rock or something, he was assassinated today. He was assassinated at Utah Valley University, and he was shot from some distance. The exact circumstances of where the shot came from is not known. At this time, I just watched a press conference before we came on. And as it stands right now, and this is a very fluid situation, they do have a person of interest. Some of you may have seen an older gentleman in cuffs online earlier. That person has been ruled out, although they have been detained for obstruction of justice. In the wide spectrum of things, it's not confirmed that they have the shooter, but they do have a person of interest. Charlie was giving a presentation at Utah Valley University. We're not going to play the tape, but he was sitting in a chair under a little, sun tent, just to provide some shade, and was hit very violently. His body jerked upward, a huge gush of blood out the side. It certainly did not appear to something that could be survivable, but you never know. There was glimmers of a hope in the following hour because there were reports that he had a pulse on the way to the hospital and things like that, and that's often the case. They do everything they can to give a person that's been inflicted with that kind of a wound every chance for survival. There was optimistic reports, for example, when JFK was hit. And here again, they do that in the first minutes only to give the body any possible chance to recover as much help as they can. But typically, when there's too catastrophic of an injury, there's just something that can't be done. The reason that we're going live today is not to hop on a news cycle. That is not my intention. But I do feel that at a time like this, you want to hear like-minded comments. It's very comforting to hear people discussing, going through the same thing that you are going through. And it's good for, I would believe, I'll speak for Shaman and I, it's good to talk some of these things out. And so I felt it was a good idea to come on just for a little bit and talk about this. I'm not going to get into too much more detail about what's happening because if you're watching the replay or anything like that, this is very fluid. Things I just mentioned could change. But I think the wider impact of this is kind of what we want to cover. Cynthia, your first reactions when you got the news?
Well, like a lot of other people, I got the optimistic part of it, and they didn't mention that he was shot in the neck, so I didn't really think that much of it. And then I heard it was his neck, and I knew immediately that the chances of him surviving a serious neck wound are pretty uncommon. And of course, I've seen the video since, and it's shocking. It's not something I would play either. But I'm honestly not surprised there's a lot of fear right now in this country because there's a dramatic amount of change that we're all undergoing at the same time. No matter who's, it's not even about politics. The world is dramatically changing. Artificial intelligence is changing everything. It's got a lot of people on pins and needles. We've got a lot of serious social issues that are hot topics and getting really beaten around in dramatic ways in the news media. And then you've got, Charlie, who incredible guy who did, you got to give him a lot of credit for standing up for whatever he believed in, and that's his right, and he did it beautifully and very powerfully. And I'm not honestly surprised at this point, given the temperature and the fear around, that somebody would actually take him out. And that's where we're at. To me, the most important thing for this country and his family is healing has to take place.
One of the things I would say is, at this time, here again, it's too early to tell, this seemed like a very planned assassination by somebody who is to some degree capable.
Oh yeah.
A lot of times people that do these things, quite frankly, are lunatics, and they don't do well. They make too many mistakes and things like that. But this seemed like it was very well planned and executed.
Professional. It felt professional.
Yeah. And we don't know that. Here again, it's too early to tell. But what I can tell you, I think the nature of having him get shot in front of a crowd, on TV being taped, and maybe live in some cases, I'm not sure what was going on out there. I'm sure it was being streamed by a lot of people. The second thing that actually shocked me is, mostly on the left, the celebrations on the
Speechless. I can't even, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I would have found that hard to believe that people would actually do this. But I'm seeing people gleefully dance around. It is shocking.
Yes. And it's something that I said a long time ago. I mean, not a long time ago, months ago, weeks ago, that the sensibilities of the public now are really starting to become uncertain. And for example, in my wildest day, I would never have celebrated someone getting killed. I don't care who they are. Today, somebody that I despise, like Gavin Newsom. Okay. If somebody like that, somebody I detest on that level, I'm not making it about him. If somebody I detest politically on that level would have something like this happen to him, I would never in a million years gleefully talk about it. And I'll say this, Shaman, I know you're from New York, you know New York very well. If 9/11 were to happen today, I honestly believe that there would be people, Americans, celebrating it.
That is just how divided we've become. That's actually something you and I can both see. But this violence, like I've heard people saying, "Oh my goodness, this violence that we have now," and it's like, the violence caused by the rhetoric that's been going on and the fear mongering, which is really ultimately at the end of the day, these people are using fear and people's most base way of being manipulated. They're using that to create conversation and just to distract from whatever's going on. And since before Trump was even shot,
Yes.
you could feel that kind of violence rising. So this violence has been going on for over a year now.
Yes. We've had a couple of attempts on governors. We've had numerous attempts on the president when he was a candidate. We could go on. People are getting threatened all the time now.
Wasn't it two Congress people that were, or the Congresswoman who was murdered in her home with her husband by somebody who was mad at them for.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I think that was Michigan, somewhere around.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, memory might be wrong on that, but suffice it to say, public officials now are constantly being threatened. And here's the thing: we talk a lot about free speech, and I think free speech it's misunderstood. Somebody like Charlie Kirk did what you're supposed to do with free speech. He spoke and he engaged the opposition. Now, this isn't a matter of do you like Charlie Kirk or not, or if you're upset about this or not. I am, and I'm quite frankly taken back by anybody getting taken before their time. He had a wife, children, all these other things. So yes, this is horrible. But there's a couple of layers to this that I don't know that are being touched on. And the first one is the person who took that shot And this was a political assassination because
Oh, yeah.
even though he didn't have a political position, a formal, like, senator or whatever, he was a political figure. And this was an assassination, absolutely. And what this is about in regard to free speech is the person who took that shot not only killed a human being,
Mhm.
but they told everybody there, and anybody who has any interest in hearing what Charlie Kirk had to say, whether they were with him or against him, they made a decision for everyone who wanted to hear him, in that you don't need to listen to this person. It was a silencing of someone. Okay. And that is the layer that we sometimes forget. And no matter what side of the political spectrum you are on, and that's why I wouldn't want some of the politicians that I don't like, that I detest, have anything harm come to them, is I don't want people who want to listen to them have that opportunity taken from them by someone who is going to go on a murderous mission. And they're not only trying to kill a person, but they're trying to kill the idea that there's people who want to hear that person. They are silencing the voice that people want to hear. And when you start to recognize that, and quite frankly, if you just go to one of these events that cause a disruption, that's not exercising your right to free speech. I know people go there to heckle and everything. They say, "Well, I can speak too." That's not what free speech is. When people have a designated event, people come there to listen to them, whether they support them or not. They just might want to hear what they have to say. When somebody comes and disrupts that, what they're really doing, there's not just shutting that person up. They're telling everybody there, you don't need to listen to this person. We're going to make that decision for you. Now,
Yeah, well, they're ultimately trying to silence the other side. They're
Absolutely.
ultimately trying to remove the freedom of speech of the people that disagree with them.
Yes. And this is where all the death threats and everything come from. They try to create an environment. It's a terroristic act in that they want to create an environment where people are afraid to speak. And Charlie had death threats. He had security with him. But like I said, I think what happened with the local police, from what I can gather from the press conference that I just took in, is that they had the main perimeter pretty secure. But in this case, they don't have the resources that the Secret Service had. And something, let's say, on a rooftop that's who knows how many feet or yards away, a football field or two away. On that level, nobody considered that there would be an assassin of that type on the roof. And quite frankly, it would be hard to protect everybody who's got something to say in a public situation all the time. It would be almost impossible. When you consider all the political pundits there are on both sides of the aisle, all of the people that are involved in speaking, all the politicians, all the local politicians, all the city politicians, all the county politicians, it would be impossible to give everybody the same level of protection that the president of the United States gets. So I'm sure they thought under most circumstances that this was adequate. But here again, coming up to an assassin of this type, it just wasn't anticipated. Now that's one of the first things I wanted to point out. One of the layers that you have to consider is this assassin is trying to silence someone. And not just the person, but he's making the decision for, in this case, probably millions of people, that you don't need to listen to this person. The other layer to this, if you will, is this is coming on, as you intimated, we talked about already, that what's happened to other politicians, what's happened to a lot of just people who want to speak, having their lives threatened. This is coming on the heels of a pretty violent couple of weeks.
Yeah.
You had the young lady who was horribly murdered on the lake train. And the videos of that are just, I'll say this, the last week, between that video of that woman getting stabbed and just leaning over and bleeding out, and having to watch what happened with Charlie Kirk, this is awful. I mean, this is some of the most gruesome things that you can imagine, some of the most violent, gruesome things that you can possibly imagine that are becoming all too common. Um, I've run across a lot of people online and in life when I on the phone before I got on here, saying that they are physically ill by what's going on. There was
Yeah.
the young professor, 59 years old, that was hacked to death. And you had this another young woman who was thrown off of a bridge here recently. And these horrific acts are they're mounting. And I think what the other layer to this is where I was going to this. I think that people are reaching a threshold now
Yeah.
on
I
the other
agree.
side of the spectrum that you haven't had before, for the most part. And I'm not advocating for conservatives or liberals. I'm just saying in general, the extremes of those two. I think now the idea of what was once an extreme right-wing person is the moderates now are becoming radicalized by what's happening in the news, by what's happening in our society. People who were always willing to make the exception, always say, well, this is an isolated event. And there's a feeling in the country now that they've had enough. And this is coming on the heels of, police being villainized. Not that there haven't been bad police, but this idea that we have to get rid of the police. That compassion comes in trying to understand why a violent criminal does what he does. There's always a million excuses that come out. I'm all for. I'm an advocate, as you well know, for mental health, but I think that in some cases, what happens now is that term is used as an excuse to behave badly and do awful things. And what happened on the light train with that woman being stabbed? That person was reportedly released 14
14
times.
times. Yeah. This
14
as a
times.
woman, this doesn't surprise me because most people don't actually know that most men who get accused of rape or convicted of rape never spend any time in jail. So
Yeah.
the fact that this guy got out 14 times is certainly not a surprise to me.
And there's somebody somewhere, they let him out on for an evaluation. Somebody somewhere decided that this was good. This was a good idea. Yeah. And I never understood the tolerance that we have for violent crime in the United States. I never understood it. But during the 1970s or 1980s, it wasn't quite as bad. Now it's off the charts. People who commit violent crimes get GoFundMes. They kill somebody and they get GoFundMes now. And they don't just get some trivial amount of money. They get tens of thousands of dollars, $500,000 in some cases. Are these the people that we need to be helping? Are these the people that we need to be catering to? I believe during the 1960s is when a lot of this bullshit started. And it kind of got nipped in the bud by what happened with Charles Manson.
Mhm.
Charles Manson got held up as, this is what drugs and being a hippie will do to you. Now, Charles Manson was never really a hippie. He was somebody who manipulated
He
those
used
people.
it. Yeah, he used
Yeah.
it as a costume.
He used it to get those people to love him and to follow him and to do bad things for him. He manipulated that culture. But the perception was, this guy with long hair on drugs. This is what, and we're worried about. We're done dealing with these people's rights. So the Manson murders actually put the conservative path of crime and punishment on the right track for about 10 or 15 years. And then all of a sudden, these liberal ideals started to creep in the 1990s, and they just have gone off the charts here in the last 10 or 15 years. This idea we have to defund the police, this idea that, these people who commit violent crimes, assault police officers and everything else just get let right out within hours with some $500 bail. And if you say anything bad about them, you're a hater. If you say anything bad about them, you're intolerant. If you say anything bad about them, you're a racist. There's always some label that gets put on you when you say, we don't want this happening in our society. And they have villainized so many people who champion law and order, and Charlie Kirk is one of them. Now, I didn't agree with a lot. I was never a big Charlie Kirk person. I couldn't tell you his position on everything. I didn't follow him as much as I follow some other people.
I disagreed with him on a lot of things.
Yeah. And a little too far.
But it never occurred to me to turn that into a seed of hatred. You know, Billy, America is at this incredibly important turning point. You know, I
Yes.
wrote A New American Dream last year, and that book was about, I mean, I was so distressed over the state of America that I helped stopped everything and just wrote a book about the fact that the American dream was dead and that there was only one way to fix it, and that we needed to deal with the mental health issue in this country. We needed to structure things to be able to succeed in the age of AI. But the whole book's about saving the American dream. And the reason I bring that up as a purpose, I think the biggest difference between what I see going on with conservatives and the liberals is that a lot of the conservatives understand that this country needs saving, not in just those ways, but in many ways. And we're over here trying to put it on life support, and we've got the Democrats throwing rocks at the people trying to give aid to a really serious. We're actually in a very serious situation as a country, and we need healing. We do not need more division, and they have absolutely exhausted. They've exhausted the American people with the constant whining, complaining, and making things about issues that really, in the realm of the world, it's like they keep pointing at the freckles, and we're over here trying to fix the cancer.
Yes.
It's like, guys, like, focus. And I think this is just where we've been headed for a while now, but particularly in this last year, because they were so freaked out by Trump that they're using fear to keep themselves in the media because their party's such a mess, and something has to give.
Yeah. Well, you look at how illegal immigration was handled. You know, my position on that is John Kennedy from Louisiana. You know, he made an excellent analogy. You know, you lock your doors at night, not because you hate the world, not because you hate everybody that's outside, but you just don't want to let anybody in until you know who they are. That's really what it's about. And somehow the left, you know, when you talk about, first of all, they take away the distinction between, they say conservatives are anti-immigration. They take away the distinction between coming here and going through the rule of law and playing by the rules and doing what everybody's grandfather did years ago when they came to this country. They and just running across the border, they differentiate those two things. They don't, I should say. They just mix those together. So you're anti-immigration. You're a hater for anybody that comes across you're all this other stuff. And they took the common sense approach to securing the border out of the equation. For the most part, I don't know why Joe Biden, it's almost like he deliberately let the floodgates open.
They did. Well, the people who were really running the White House deliberately and the Democratic Party let those states down.
And what happened is you had this influx of the FBI estimates something like 12,000, 13,000 people that are known violent criminals in. And that's only what we know about. For what reason? And then when they do commit crimes, if you point it out, the left says, well, you're a racist for pointing that out. People here commit crimes too. It's that same old straw man argument. I got to tell you, it's getting old now. I'm going to tell people on the left right now, these straw man arguments, well, it's not everybody. It's not this. It's starting to get old. It's starting to sound like bullshit. I don't care how eloquent Rachel Maddow is. I don't care how many adjectives she throws into it. I don't care how many logic, if then, therefores she puts into this. Eloquent or not, it's starting to sound like bullshit.
She sounded like bullshit for a couple of years now.
Yes.
I mean, she's just like, it's like she's lost the plot. I mean, if you listen to did you see some of the news coverage? Some of the bizarre things that they were saying, like, oh, it appears as though a person in the audience may have shot off a
celebratory firing around. Yeah.
Where did you even get that? I mean,
the only explanation I have for that is that somebody that hit on the phone, that's somebody that hit on the line. I saw the clip. That person was being piped in. It sounded like by a phone or something. And he maybe just wasn't aware of the tape, wasn't aware of
What
what
are you doing
happened.
on national TV doing
Yes,
an interview if you don't know what the hell happened? Like,
and
that's another one. I keep hearing like, I keep well, I don't watch mainstream media, but when I get forced to, it amazes me the people that they will have on there as guests who have
oh, I know.
absolutely little to no experience, or they may be telegenic, but half the time they're not even prepared for the interview.
No, they're not. And so I don't know what this person's excuse was, but it was absolutely ridiculous. To go on national TV and be speculating about something that's in plain view for the world to see, something horribly in plain view for the world to see, is outrageous. And I will say this: I haven't had a chance to investigate all these clips. There was a clip of somebody, I believe it was on MSNBC or CNN, one of those, saying that, well, Charlie Kirk has, caused a lot of divisiveness, and when you cause a lot of divisiveness, this is what you get. It was almost like saying he got what he deserved. It was damn close to saying the chicken's coming home to roost. And in this day and age, a divisive statement is just saying anything that somebody else doesn't agree with.
Yeah.
What I was getting at was I don't know Charlie Kirk's every talking point. I know who he is from, obviously during the campaigns. When there was a big news event going on, I would check into him, and like I do with so many others, and just to hear what he had to say. I didn't necessarily follow him all the time, so I don't know what all of his talking points are. But I will say this: during moments of crisis that he commented on, whether they were being perceived as something that the left was going to run with or the right was going to run with, he never celebrated a tragedy. I don't know of him inciting something horrible. I don't know of him smirking at something horrible. Whereas I've on cable news, yes, it's happened.
And in the video, when you add to the cable news, like half of them are smirking, especially when it wasn't clear that he was dead yet. But I saw videos of people on social media celebrating, and I have to ask, because they used to say Trump derangement syndrome, but this kind of lunacy where people are literally jumping up and down, physically throwing their arms in the air, applauding, laughing, giving signs to the camera, and posting it on social media for everybody in the world to see. What kind of mental illness is that? Because I know a lot about mental health and mental illness, and I'm not making fun. I'm being dead serious. There has to be something other than just Trump derangement syndrome to explain how in my lifetime, I've never lived at a time where people thought it was okay to celebrate somebody else's murder. Like
No,
lunacy.
no, I don't care how much I despised a political figure. I would never celebrate something like this. I don't care who it is, who or what they stood for. Um, the idea that this is where I'm going to talk about mental health again. I'm a mental health advocate. We have a problem in this country. We need more. We've got to stop the stigma of mental health. I can't say it enough. If you're suffering from mental health issues, you are far more likely to become a victim than you are to become a perpetrator. With that being said, there are Norman Bateses in the world. Okay. But I don't even think that this is psycho. I think this is even worse. I think we now have a population that's celebrating this. This is beyond mental health. This is something at the core of whatever you believe in terms of what makes a human being a human, whether you believe, religious, spiritual people are going to say it's a soul.
Demonic? You mean
Yeah,
demonic behavior?
yeah, sure. The scientific people are going to say it's the will that exists inside you. Whatever you subscribe to, whatever notion you believe in, whether it's the will or whether it's the soul, there's something very sinister happening in somebody that this is beyond mental health. If you can laugh at someone getting shot in the throat or the top of the chest, or wherever he was hit, and a stream of blood spew out of him, and he rolls over. If you somehow think that is funny, I don't even have an intellectual response for that. I don't know what to say about it.
It's demonic. Whether you believe that's got nothing to do with religion, or even, I mean, if you believe that people can get into such unhealthy places that they are in that what you call, it's like it's the opposite of that really joyful, beautiful, wonderful person that It's like when somebody's there, there's something demonic to that behavior. Dancing and applauding and throwing your arms up in the air to celebrate somebody else's murder. That's evil.
Yeah. And I got to say, there were people that didn't like JFK. Okay.
Mhm.
And when he got assassinated, I'm sure there were some people who were more upset about it than others. But there were, I don't remember. And I've gone through, I'm kind of a history buff, especially the post World War II. I never remember seeing tapes of people celebrating in the street the assassination of JFK or the assassination of Martin Luther King. I'm going to say it didn't happen. If it did happen, it was so isolated. It was like one or two kooks. But now it's thousands, tens of thousands, and it's all over social media. It's being celebrated like it's the 4th of July. I don't I like I said, I don't have words for it. There's no way to debate this. I'm kind of like Charlie Kirk, whether you like him or not. He did try to approach things from an intellectual fashion. He tried to debate people. He called up people that didn't agree with him first. He tried to face things point on point. There's no way to approach the idea that there's these dumb punks on social media, on TikTok, doing these dances. Let's have one. I ran across one that says, "Let's have a moment of silence for Charlie Kirk," and they blasted all this music, and that's supposed to be funny. Um, I, how do you debate that? Is there an intellectual way to confront that?
I found it interesting that Obama commented so quickly because Charlie Kirk wasn't a Democrat and he wasn't an actual politician. It was unusual, and I knew immediately that he's commenting. This is my opinion,
Yeah.
that Obama knows that it looks really, really, really bad. I mean, there's so many people that I know who are Democrats who can't even like look at their party anymore. They can't take any of them any seriously. But there's just this. It's like this fringe element of 1,000 people still running the Democratic Party right into the ground, and they seem to be oblivious. But Obama's been around long enough to know, something had to be said. But otherwise, I don't think he would have said anything.
One of the things that I did notice, Lara Logan, I caught her feed on X, and one of the things that she was talking about is don't let yourself fall into the trap of letting this become a catalyst for more violence. It's like they stoke the left, they stoke the right, and with violent acts and with the horrible media coverage, and they're trying to get everybody riled up to the point to where there's going to be even more. And I really do think, I hope I'm wrong. I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I've been around a long time. I remember all the scary rhetoric about Ronald Reagan. I remember, oh, he's going to cause World War III. He's going to go to war with the Russians. And I always knew that, nothing was ever going to happen. Okay. This is the first time in my years that I honestly am unsure that we are going to remain a stable nation for much longer. I really am unsure of that. I wish I wouldn't have to say thing. And I can't imagine that I would ever say something like that about the United States, because we've always had a collective wisdom through our hardest times that kept the glue. The glue was there that kept us together. All through the '60s and other things that happened. There was always a conventional wisdom that you could trust in the American people, that there was going to be a certain amount of stability. I'm not sure I trust in that anymore.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm hopeful, and I think that's what I think that sentiment that you just shared, that is where we're at. We're in the battle for saving this country. We can do it, but we need the Democrats to stop getting in the way of everything just because it gives them attention or gives them headlines. They're literally taking every single thing that's reminds me of a vampire. I feel like that's really what they've turned into, and they are feasting off of the energy of this country and injecting the country full of negativity, and it's poisoning us at a time when we're trying to save the country. Like, do they actually, when you look at them letting everybody in the world, including a bunch of criminals, into the country just to win the White House again, it's like, well, really, is it that much of a surprise? But come on, guys, we're trying to save the country here. You got to stop the hatred, the divisiveness, it's real, it's to the point where you're killing all the mainstream media because they're right there with you sharing the same nonsense.
Yeah. Like I said, I've always felt good about the collective wisdom of the country.
Mhm.
And here's the thing. The founding fathers knew that was an issue. That's why, when you talk about the the electoral college, people say, well, it's not fair, and it does compensate. Let's say if you're a big state versus a small state, it makes sure that the small states, who may only have a handful of votes, still have a voice in the election. That is true. It does do that, and that's important, and that's one of the reasons why I don't want to mess with the electoral college. But the bigger issue is, the real reason that it's in place is because the founding fathers knew you could not trust the collective wisdom of the country. That's why it's there. That's the safety valve. Okay, that's for when, Vlad the Impaler starts to win primaries.
Right.
That is why the electoral college is there. And it's one of the reasons why a pure democracy does not work. Okay, because there's too many stupid people in a large population. I'm being totally serious.
No, it's actually true. I was just thinking that yesterday. I'm like, oh, we got a lot of stupid people, don't we?
Yes, and the founding fathers knew that. Can you imagine something like civil rights being put to a vote in the 1930s? It wouldn't have flown. And you could go on and on with these things. So that's why you don't have a pure democracy, okay? Because in a pure democracy, there are no lines between voting what the masses want and mob rule. Those two things get mixed together. You have a mob that's ruling in a pure democracy. So that's why we are a constitutional republic. We have little safeguards. There's little areas that are non-negotiable. Okay. And that's why we have a representative government. Okay. They knew that sooner or later, the collective wisdom of the country was going to start to come unglued. That's why the safeguards are there. And that's why a free press was so important. Okay. Because they never wanted a narrative to be guided by the government to where you could mold that ignorance. Like the Romans said, we can do anything we want as long as we give them bread and circuses. That's why the Colosseum is there. All you got to do is give the stupid people something to watch. Okay. And you'll be fine. And unfortunately, these safeguards that have been in place can't control everything. It can't control the dam starting to crack. And I just really hope that the collective wisdom of this country starts to come around. Common sense has to come back. And I think way too much, I'm basically conservative, but I'm not conservative on everything. I really think the prism, the filter now that we have, everything has to go through a lens that you view from the right or from the left. Mm-hmm. We don't have somebody go 360 degrees around the whole thing. We examined that. There's a statue there, Cynthia. Okay, there's this beautiful statue, and I'm going to look at it from the right. Yeah. Okay, and somebody else is going to look at it from the left. Okay, Now there's still 363 other degrees that we should be examining this statue from and appreciating it. But we don't have time for that. We don't have time for that anymore. That's why the founding fathers were so concerned about an educated populace. And I didn't necessarily mean school.
Yeah.
They thought everybody should know how the government works. They should know, certain things about the economy. And they were all for that, because the more you know about these things, the more you can examine them.
Yeah, the more involved they are. Yeah, it's interesting. So, as a spiritual teacher, and social theorist, I've studied our population quite a bit, and the demise of religion, without something healthier taking its place,
absolutely,
has really been has really pushed the mental health crisis into new levels, and I believe it's actually going to get worse, because the age of AI is going to take away a lot of people's purpose, because we've been taught to make our job our purpose instead of living a good life, simple life where we love ourselves. Anyway, when you take away religion, and you start to confuse people about the world, in the Democrats' case, I think they sort of leaned into turning being a member of that party into their entire identity. And the reason that they fight so voraciously and they get so upset about things where you're like, can you just have a rational conversation about this? And it's delusional, angry. Even, and there's that violence underlying, that the desire to shove the opinion down your throat. And that's because it's the new, identity politics. It's the new religion. And they really see their beliefs as their religion, and they take them as seriously. Like, we have wars all over this planet over people having competing ideas of the way life should be lived religiously. And I think when you look at the way the Democrats behave, it reminds me a lot of terrorists who are trying to support the way they believe that people should live. And that's what they've done. They've turned their democratic identity into meaning everything to them. And they need to really go get a life and get on board with America just as a collective to help us move forward.
Yes. Sad day. Shaman, I know we're not promoting anything, just to let people know where they can find you if they like you. Somber day, but just let people know who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I did have a short prayer with me that is for Charlie's family and for healing for the country. Is it okay to read it?
Absolutely.
All right. Divine Spirit of love and unity, we lift our hearts in prayer for America, asking for healing where there is division, compassion where there is anger, and understanding where there is fear. Today, we especially grieve the senseless loss of Charlie Kirk. May his family and loved ones be wrapped in comfort, strength, and peace during this time of deep sorrow. Let his passing remind us of the sacredness of every human life, and may it call us to build bridges of kindness, respect, and hope across our nation. We ask for grace to guide us forward together in love and unity. Amen.
Yes. A lot of bad things happening. The murder on the rail car. Very graphic, brutal video. And today with Charlie Kirk, the graphic nature of violence has been put in our face like never at a time that I can remember. And the idea that there's people celebrating this, I think, really twists the blade in terms of the sorrow that you're feeling for Charlie Kirk, to know that there's people out there who are celebrating the violent loss of human life, like it's some kind of a spectacle to cheer for, is very disturbing to me. And I can only hope that we find our way, that we can find our way, because human life should never, human life should never be used for that purpose, to celebrate the end of it like it's, like it's, winning some kind of a game. Life has value, and everybody has meaning to their lives. Everybody has people that they cherish, and their spirit, whether you want to call it, whether you want to call it a soul or whether you want to call it the will. We all have that, and we all want to retain it for as long as possible and enjoy life for as much as possible. Very sad day. So I'll leave that there. My name is Billy Dees. You can find me on X at Billy Dees. And thank you very much for listening. I hope that this little talk vented some things for the listeners. I hope that the coming week is in the coming days are better for everyone. Do you have any closing words, Cynthia?
Nope, just sending love to everybody, to all the listeners.
Yes. Thank you very much for listening. And we will be talking to you again about this and so many other things very, very soon.
Thank you for listening to the Billy Dees podcast. Follow Billy Dees on X at Billy Dees for updates about the program.
Do you listen to music or audiobooks on streaming devices such as Sonos or Amazon speakers? How about on your car sound system? If you use Spotify, Audible, or Amazon Music on any of these systems, you can also listen to the Billy Dees podcast the same way. Billy and his team go the extra mile to make sure our podcasts sound as good or better than anything on the radio. Listening to the Billy Dees podcast has never been easier. You literally just have to ask.